The Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind, and Singin' in the Rain. These movies stick out as some of the most quintessential Hollywood masterpieces. Not only are they known for their imagery and their revolutionary use of color, and just being all-around good movies, they're also known for their timeless scores. What might surprise you is that the scores to these movies no longer exist. You might be thinking, oh, they're just lost or misplaced perhaps. Someday we might find them in the attic of one of the film composer's offspring or something like that. Every great composer wrote works that are lost and waiting to be discovered, and every few years the news of some unknown or lost manuscript being discovered graces the headlines. You never know what could happen, but what happened to the scores of these timeless classics is no mystery. The tragedy is we know exactly what happened, which makes it even more heartbreaking and aggravating. So what did happen? First of all, it's important to find the relationship between these movies, which is that they were all made by MGM. And it's not just these scores that are missing, but literally all the film scores from MGM's heyday. So I bet you're thinking, oh, it's a fire that caused this. Any music connoisseur is aware of the 2008 Universal Studios fire, where it's estimated that up to 175,000 master tapes of music from the Universal Music Catalog were lost forever. It just so happens MGM also had a vault fire in 1965, where the last known print of the silent masterpiece, London After Midnight, was lost forever, along with many other silent films. So this is what happened, right? The MGM vault fire must have destroyed the original scores as well, except this wasn't the demise of MGM's musical history. Between 1929 and 1969, MGM amassed a huge quantity of sheet music. This wasn't just reserved for film scores, but also commercial music, piano reductions, cue sheets, and reference literature. By the 1940s, the collection contained over 3 million items, making it the second largest music library in the United States after the Library of Congress. This collection was mainly the result of the hard work of one George Garrison Schneider, who invested most of his life into curating the gigantic library. He would thankfully die before seeing what became of his life's work. In 1969, a wealthy businessman and investor by the name of Kirk Kerkorian, I think that's how it's pronounced, purchased a controlling interest in MGM Studios. Kirk seemed to be more interested in the profitable real estate potential of the huge MGM backlot in Culver City than making movies. To deal with the liquidation of assets to squeeze anything profitable out of the failing company before selling off the valuable land on which the backlot was located, Kirk entrusted James T. Aubrey, known facetiously as the Smiling Cobra, with the job of cleaning house. What happened next is absolutely baffling to me. What I've heard from anecdotal sources is that while touring the gigantic music library, Aubrey looked around and asked if the music had been recorded. The person showing him around said yes, to which he replied, "If it's been recorded, why are you wasting space storing the sheet music?" So you think the sensible thing would be to donate everything to the Library of Congress, right? Oh no, James T. Aubrey opted for the far easier, cheaper, and utterly careless option of throwing the music away. So literally tons of original handwritten scores, orchestral parts, and performance notes were dumped into a landfill along the Sepulveda Pass. Angelinos will know this is the place they spend a great deal of time sitting in traffic on the 405. To add insult to injury, this landfill is now the site of the idyllic Mountain Gate Country Club. Today, Hollywood's historical music legacy serves merely as mulch for a golf course. I wonder if any of the members of that club realize while aiming for the 18th hole that beneath them lies the original score to Somewhere Over the Rainbow. So I guess we can call it Somewhere Under a Country Club now. The truth is, the loss was so complete I can't even find information on what scores were lost. We're talking about all the music from MGM up until 1969. Other classics like the scores to Dr. Zhivago or Ben-Hur are probably down there too. The immensity of one stupid, diabolically cold, and evil decision by a short-sighted executive focused only on short-term profits led to the loss of some of Hollywood's greatest film scores. To me, what is most tragic is the score to Gone with the Wind. For most of Hollywood's history, it was considered Hollywood's greatest movie, and it had a score to match it, written by Max Steiner, considered the father of film music. So how are these scores performed in a concert setting now? The truth is that arrangers often have to rewrite the scores from ear, which is an enormously time-consuming and difficult task. But at the very least, arrangers out there are getting paid, so there is some silver lining. But no matter how good your ear is, the rewritten versions will never be quite the same as the original. So what is the point of this video other than just being a sad story? I think it's important to highlight these wholesale destructive events because they help us avoid making similar mistakes in the future. To get somewhat off point, right now, for example, in Los Angeles stands the former home of Sergei Rachmaninoff. The place where he spent a good deal of his life and where he would eventually die is still there. Is it a cultural landmark? Is it protected? The answer is sadly no. Some rich developer could buy it tomorrow and destroy it. This already happened to Gershwin's house in Beverly Hills in 2005. In Austria, the country where I live at the moment, the houses of composers are protected and often house museums dedicated to them. Maybe this is asking too much of the valuable land in Beverly Hills, but the least we can do is protect the houses so that they might someday become a museum. I mean, Rachmaninoff just isn't some random guy. He's one of the greatest composers of the 20th century. And I can imagine in the near or distant future people wanting to see his home and where he worked and where he practiced, where he ate, where he slept. That's part of history and culture, and if we lose it, it's gone forever. A few years back in Vienna, I noticed an older house getting demolished. There was a man across the street that seemed very sad. He was apparently trying to save the building as it was the site of a cafe where Franz Schubert had spent a great deal of time. His efforts proved inconsequential as he appeared to be the only person who cared enough to try and save the building, and now the site is occupied by a nondescript, ugly modern apartment block. Just another small piece of history lost forever. I know this is somewhat off topic from the lost scores of Hollywood, but the same motive that threatens these houses is behind the dumping of MGM's music library into a landfill. Some people just don't give a damn about history and are interested in their own personal gains, and in their lust for fortune they condemn huge swaths of history to be lost forever, be it cultural landmarks or entire libraries as was the case with MGM. Some things are worth saving, no matter how frivolous and meaningless they might seem at the moment, so if you live in an area where something historically important is threatened, it might just be up to you to do something about it, because if not you, then who?